Yes, folks, after that weird startup, I'm Fred McMurray. It's Thursday. It's 2 p.m. Pacific, if I remember correctly, which means this has to be. Ladies, how we doing today?
We're doing well. How are you, Fred?
Stressed as normal. So what can I say?
Normal, so you're at baseline.
Effectively, yes. Baseline.
Well,
Take it
good.
away.
All right. Well, welcome to Pillars of Franchising, everybody. We've got a lively bunch today. Everybody's got a lot of energy, and we've got a great guest for you. But first, Kristin is traveling to IFA as we speak. So Laura and I are going to do the word on the street today. And Laura, how are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Elizabeth. How about you?
Good.
Still there?
Yeah, really good. Our topic today is kind of an interesting one. It's both a cautionary tale and an idea that this is why you need the Pillars team on your side. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the antics of Burger IM?
Sure. So Burger Im or Burger IM, Burger Reem, it's originally an Israeli burger franchise that came to the US. Probably, I think we started to see them coming in around 2015, 2016. And they had really, really explosive growth. Okay. And what's happened, unfortunately, over the last few years is that it's come out that they sort of didn't have a lot of truthful statements, allegedly, in their FDD. They found themselves being prosecuted by the California Franchise Regulatory Agency. And, now that that's concluded, in a rare move, okay, this is very unusual, the actual Federal Trade Commission is taking action against them. It's very uncommon. We bring this up not because we want to scare anyone, but because if you're seeing this in the headlines, because the Federal Trade Commission is taking action, it is something to know is possible, but I don't think it's probably happened in 20 or 30 years that they've actually pursued another franchisor. So, they had tons and tons of sales, and unfortunately, those enforcement actions started because there were allegations of the franchisor not fulfilling, their requirements.
Well, they made a lot of lofty promises, didn't they, that were really kind of red flags in themselves. And I don't want to go into the red flags too much because that's what we're going to talk about in your segment today. However, there were a lot of things that were a little bit suspect, so to say. They were making promises that most other brands were not making and not fulfilling them.
Right, that's absolutely true. And I think too that, there just wasn't, at least from what I've read in the allegations, there wasn't a lot of comprehensive or, all-encompassing sort of disclosure-minded thinking happening when the FDD was prepared. We say jokingly that, with my franchises in here, sounds like. So it's definitely not, something that I think everybody needs to be on the lookout for, but we are going to cover later on some of the different things that you should be on the lookout for that are actually more likely things that you could come across.
Perfect. And if you need to have a team of experts review anything that you're looking at, the Pillars of Franchising is always here for a consultation on that with Laura and our other mentors and experts. But having said that, why don't we get to our guests? We've got Katie Yeargan from Waxxpot, and Ray and Jerry are going to be on to talk to her.
Hello. I'd like to first of all welcome our guest, Katie. Is she? Yeah, there she is. She's on.
Hello.
And welcome to the show, Katie. And I'm going to go ahead and read your bio. And basically, Katie is a franchise veteran. And she's held leadership roles at 3 of the world's largest salons, including Supercuts, Great Clips, and Sports Clips. With firsthand insight on how each of these organizations excelled or stalled, Katie has deep insight into principles and practices that focus and invigorate operations in practically any model. Franchising is in her blood. Katie's parents were among the early Supercuts franchisees back in the 1980s, and she certainly swept her share of hair as her family businesses grew from a single store to dozens of profitable locations in Northern California. The frontline family business experience helped her launch her corporate career, in which she has successfully tackled a wide range of projects. So from there, I think I'm going to let you tackle those wide range of topics, but not until I ask Jerry what happened to your hair.
I went for a younger look, Ray. That's what we're all striving for, right? Get rid of the gray as much as you can. So, well, folks, I just want to let you know, this is one of my favorite things of all the time I've been on this show. I get to interview one of my best friends in the world of franchising, a person that I have respected and really looked up to for many years. Ever since probably the minute we met each other, we had a connection. So Katie, thank you so much for agreeing to come on our show today.
Jerry, I am so excited to be here. I was very nervous. And then I'm like, you're just talking to Jerry. You're going to be fine. So thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. And Katie, yeah, you're right. You're just talking to Jerry. So I think this is a good segue. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about the first time you and I met and how that experience went? I think they'll enjoy it.
Yes. So I want to preface that by saying the first person that I really connected with at Great Clips was your daughter, Sam. She and I were in a class together, a 5-day class together, and we sat together the first day, and then mysteriously were not allowed to sit together. Our name tags kept being moved because she and I couldn't stop talking. And all she kept saying was, you've got to meet my dad. You've got to meet Jerry. Oh my gosh, you guys are going to hit it off. And several other people told me the same thing, especially when I told them I was going down to Iowa to meet you and Mickey. So we meet, we drive up to Dubuque, right? Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Which was what, about an hour and a half?
Yeah.
And talk the whole way, make decisions about locations and what do we think. And, we're chatting and doing our thing. And on the way home, we realized that we had missed the exit to your town, that I can't imagine how many times you've actually taken that exit. And because we had just been lost in our shared passion, our shared stories, our big visions, our thoughts on everything from, how to make Iowa better to how to make the industry better, and just really how grateful you and I both are for being involved in franchising. And especially giving my 2 cents on being a second gen, and you at that point were really just bringing the girls in. So I loved those conversations as well.
I can't fathom, Katie, two people having more things in the industry to talk about because, with your experience being a second gen, you talked about my kids coming in, the fact your parents grew a very large organization with Supercuts. We were in the midst of growing a very large organization with Great Clips. You and I have huge passion for the industry, everything from education all the way up to, picking real estate and taking good care of employees and things like that. So really that's what it was about. And when we're talking to our listeners, tell them a little bit about just how invigorating it is and how exciting it is once you do start developing that passion and seeing, your efforts start to take some merit,
Yeah, I'll share with you the story that I still remember, and I have several of them, of my mother, really, as she was growing her business. She started in Fresno, California, which is the Central Valley. She didn't have any idea how to run a business. She had been a stay-at-home mom for a while, divorced my dad. He was still around, very amicable. She was trying to start a real estate career and had the opportunity with my now stepfather. They had been friends literally since high school, to build sweat equity in Supercuts. And so she went down, started hiring, doing the Supercuts thing. And I can remember her coming back and telling us stories about the hairstylist who was able to leave the bad relationship and move into her own apartment, the hairstylist who bought a brand new car and never thought she would be able to buy a car, the young girl who sobbed when she was made a salon manager and said, because I didn't go to college, I was the black sheep, and now being able to go tell my parents that I'm going to run a business, I never imagined this for myself, and they're going to be so proud. So it was just this story after story after story that I guess I thought was unique to my mom, because, you know, I think my mom's pretty great. And then as my world expanded and as I met more owners, realizing that not all, but so many are as passionate about that part of the business as you are, as my mom is. She's 40 years as a Supercuts owner. And for me, that is also what was exciting. Like when I met Sam and she was getting ready to come into the business, I mean, it was just like my energy pot was, you know, filled up again, because I was so excited for her to be able to have that experience. So to me, that's kind of the secret sauce that nobody talks a lot about, but it's really the magic.
Well, and it's funny you said that, because I'm here thinking the same thing, because so many franchisees, and many of them listening here right now, if they're thinking about getting into a franchise, they're thinking about, you know, what money they'll have to invest, how quick they'll get their money back, you know, some of the hurdles they'll have to go through and those kinds of things. And many of them start getting wrapped up in how much money they'll make in the long run. But the bottom line is, what you and I do, and what many franchisees do, is we really find an opportunity to raise people up from where they're at, our employees and so on. And that's generally what gets us up in the morning. It's not the money, it's not all those other kinds of things, it's that kind of stuff, right?
I agree. It's
the nail on the head, right?
Yeah, it's the opportunity to really make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, again, some of the best advice she ever gave me, because I was an operator, right? So I was always looking at reports and P&Ls and daily numbers, and you know how I am about data. You know, more data the better, especially if it's colored.
Sure.
Give me a red, green, and yellow report and I'm good for hours. But she said, when you feel like the numbers are getting you down, just go to the location, right?
Right.
Go see happy customers, see your team taking care of your people, tell somebody they're doing a great job and see that the smile on their face. And I have taken that advice more times, and you realize, okay, things aren't that bad. We're good. We've got the fundamentals down. We're going to be okay. And so you're right. And I've had really candid conversations with candidates, letting them know this stuff has to get you going,
Right.
or you need a more true absentee model.
That's exactly right.
Right? Because even if you're not going to be the one, and I always believe you should be the one, but at the beginning, if you're not going to be the one, you have to care about it enough to bring on that leader and then empower that leader to make those quick decisions, to buy that pizza on a really busy Saturday, to loan that money. And I'm probably going to get lots of text messages on that. But, you know, my mom has a manager. She's been a manager for her for 20 years. She dropped her phone in the sink, and she's a single mom of 4. And she called my mom. She's bawling, crying. My mom's like, just go next door, use your shop credit card. We'll work it out. You can't be without a phone. Right. So it's that ability to take care of your people, especially in today's labor market, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and Katie, we always talk about in our family, and I know you and I think alike, we have the opportunity, we've got about 180 employees right now. We've got the opportunity not to impact the lives of 180 people, but 3 or 4 times that many through their significant others and their children and maybe even grandchildren. So it is way bigger than most people think it is. And before you and I go on, I think Ray is anxious to get a question in. So I'm going to quiet down for a minute.
No, I think you guys are doing good, because you're talking my subject. I love talking about it. You
I
know?
love it when a plan comes together, right, Katie?
And, you know, a lot of thoughts are coming
Absolutely.
in my mind, but you guys are doing great. You were talking about delegating, which I think is a big part that a lot of owners have a hard time doing. And
Well, and Katie has a lot in common with Karen and David because of her leadership and her training of leaders and growing of leaders. So I mean, she fits with all of us on this call. So I think we've got some good things to talk about. Now, Katie, I want to just make a little announcement, and then I'm going to open it up to probably something we really need to talk about because we can talk about a lot of things. But you are unique in that you have been on the franchisor side, and you've also worked on the franchisee side a couple of times. So you've kind of seen it from both sides of it, and not many people get to do that. And I want you to talk now about your new endeavor. I want you to talk about Waxxpot. That name is just so cool. I can't even imagine. So describe it for us, will you?
It's so fun. I've never done Fran Dev before. I'm loving it because I thought it was sales. It's not, right? It's just really educating people and talking about all things franchising, which
Sure.
I can do for hours. So Waxxpot is such a cool concept. It's out of Ohio, started in 2016. Daniel Sad, who actually started Salon Lofts, and I have an exclusive for you in a minute. He bought a single unit, Waxxpot, rebranded, has proprietary wax. They primarily use soft wax. They have 11 corporate stores and 2 operating franchise stores. So the cool thing that I feel like I've brought to the table is really challenging them on what is that franchise journey going to look like. And we did that, and that was super fun. And now we're really bringing it to market and looking to expand through individual ownership or multi-unit ownership, focusing regionally, but just in that we don't want a single unit sitting somewhere. If somebody says, yes, I want 3, that's great. And then in the next DMA over, we're going to really hit hard to have another one, just so that you get that synergy. And from a support perspective, it just makes sense for the corporation to really be out there and train and all of that. But
well, you can't spread too thin. You just don't have the bandwidth, both financial and expertise and support, to do it too quickly. So I think that's wise. I want you to get into it a little bit more, but I think it's important that everybody understand that, you've worked for larger, more mature brands for the most part. So tell us a little bit about, I would think, how exciting it would be to work in the position you're in right now, as opposed to, a little bit of the humdrum existence of working in a mature organization.
Yeah, it reminds me of the stories, again, that my mom used to tell, because she was in that first, what I call the first generation, right? Those legacy franchisees. And it's fun for me to talk to potential franchisees about, yes, we have all the support that we believe we have all the support that you need, but we're also looking for partners to really challenge us, to really come with ideas. I always use the $5 foot long was a Subway franchisee's idea, right? That we are really open at this point, and we can be flexible. Doesn't mean we're going to change everything, doesn't mean we're open to everything, but we're really looking for people that are excited by that certainly an emerging brand may not be as perfect as a 4,000 unit, but man, you're going to get somebody on the phone. You're going to have the CEO's phone number. You're going to make sure that you have we need to make sure you're successful, right? We need the validation. We need all of those things. So it's really, really exciting. And for me, I get to come in and feel like I get to leave a footprint, which is really, really fun. And it is that true entrepreneurial, everybody digging in, everybody getting a chance to be creative. And it's a lot of fun. I don't feel like I have to go into an already moving train. We're a little bit building the train as it's going down the track, but that's okay. We love it.
Well, Katie, I would imagine it's very similar to a franchisee when they're very actively engaged in their units, salons, restaurants, whatever it might be, when they own 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them or something like that. They're in them regularly. Everybody knows them. They know all the employees, that kind of stuff. And then as they grow, it becomes a little bit more corporate. So for us, I can only say it was way more fun when we had a handful of units where it was mom and dad and us doing everything, you know? And it's still really rewarding when you grow into those larger ones. But, you know, where you're at right now, it's still that whole, I'm engaged with everything. I got my fingers on everything. I feel like I'm a part of everything. So I'm guessing it's very similar.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. That's a great analogy. It's it very much so. And, you know, everybody's talking to everybody on the leadership team, and, you know, everybody's really, really excited. And, you know, everybody wakes up every day asking themselves, how can we make this brand even better and more appealing? And how can we make sure that these franchisees not only are successful, but they're loving it, right? We want them to never regret this decision for a minute. And so building those relationships and making sure that they feel super comfortable, and you can call anybody, it doesn't, here's your person, but hey, you can call me anytime. So it is. And, you know, as things get bigger, you can't give everybody your cell phone number.
Yeah.
You literally exactly give everybody your cell phone number, but
text me. Don't call me, text me. That's all I can handle. Katie, having been around the Energizer Bunny, which is Katie, for so long, and really, you know, you recharge everybody around you. I can only imagine, you know, what impact you're having on the owner, the franchisor, and his team, and those kinds of things. We're in those meetings. So I think they've chosen well in having you be a part of that. I'm excited for it. I want to transition a little bit because we're going to run out of time, and you and I could talk forever. I want to transition into a little bit of a conversation about IFA, the International Franchise Association. I know I'm in San Diego right now. I got to start doing stuff at the thing tomorrow, and you're headed this way in 2 days. So I'll see you out here in San Diego. But talk to me a little bit about your thoughts after being around IFA for many years, and, you know, being involved at different levels and that kind of stuff. Talk to me about your thoughts about, you know, the organization, what they stand for, what their mission is, and what it does for, you know, franchising overall.
Thank you for that question. I was on a call yesterday. There's sort of a casual group, a women in franchising clubhouse, and every week there's a topic, and I jump in and listen. And yesterday it was a lot of how to prepare for the IFA and how to make sure that you get the most out of it. And we ended up talking about, you know, shoes and temperature and, you know, things like that. And one of the women on the call said, I have a new employee and she has tattoos. And I've never been to an IFA. Should she cover them up? Is that going to be weird? And Patty Rother said the most beautiful thing that to me really sums up the IFA. And she said, come as your most authentic self, because the majority of the people are going to appreciate it. You're going to be more comfortable. You're going to get more out of it, and you're going to contribute more. And I thought it so summed up what I love about the IFA, that I have found nothing but generous, abundant minded. And I don't necessarily mean financially abundant. I mean, you know, that there's enough customers for everybody. There's, you know, we're really here to make the world of franchising better. And I'm so excited about this agenda. I think that the IFA really has outdone themselves with the tracks, and that I'm bringing some new people to franchising, salon lofts, which we're introducing into the world of franchising, and I'm bringing their executives. And I did a whole table of where they should go and what they should do, because there's so much to choose from. So, you know, I just think the IFA, obviously the government work that they do, the lobbying, all that incredible work. I sleep better at night knowing they're in our corner. But it's, gosh, what just an incredible group of people. And I can always count on learning something.
You know, I agree with you. I couldn't have said it better. In fact, I say it every week. So that's why I set you up to say it, because they need to hear it from other people. But that literally is, the IFA is, you know, I sit on committees with Gordon Logan, who is the founder of Sport Clips.
Yes.
and a direct competitor with great clips. And yet Gordon and Rhoda Olson, who is the mother of all
The mother. Yes.
great clips, are best friends. They text each other and talk all the time. Gordon and I talk about things regularly. And you don't find those kinds of things with true competitors very often. But at IFA, it's the franchising world and what's best for us, and let's all work together on it. So, Katie, I love this. They're going to kick us off because you and I, like I said, can talk forever.
I feel like we just got started, Jerry.
I know. We'll bring you back again and we'll do it again another time. Okay, Katie?
I would love it. Thank you so much, my friend. I will see you this week.
How do people get a hold of you?
Oh. Thank you, Fred.
I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, Katie Yeargan, Yeargan, and Katie at franchiseconnectionus.us. But I'm a big LinkedIn, love LinkedIn. So find me there. It's probably the easiest thing. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
It was great. Thanks, Katie.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Ray.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
All right, we were back. That was a great like I said, everybody's got a lot of energy today, so it's fun when everybody's up and having a good time talking franchising. And the IFA, I think, is putting a little injection of excitement into the air. Laura, back to our topic that we started with in the beginning. I think it's important to be aware that not everybody is somebody you want to work with, but in franchising, that is an unusual thing. However, when you are new to the process of looking to buy, you have some advice from some of your experience and your legal expertise that can help people look for some red flags in looking at a franchise. So what have you got for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought I would go through kind of, top five things to watch for when you're evaluating a new franchisor. And I actually would say I start even before the legal document, before the FDD. And that's really looking and listening to what they're telling you or giving to you as marketing materials, right? Are they having, they're saying one thing maybe on their FAQ on their website, but if you, sit at the table with the salesperson, are they secretly writing things down on the cocktail napkin to tell you, a different side of it? Are they telling you maybe, oh yeah, you can make such and such amount of money, but that's not in the document, and we'll talk more about those item 19s in a minute too. But I think a lot of how they're conducting themselves at first, before you're even reviewing the franchise disclosure document, is really important to consider. If they seem really smooth, sometimes that's not a good thing. You can know your concept, but you don't want to necessarily be with someone like that.
Too cool for school syndrome.
Yes, too cool for school syndrome is not a good thing. I think the next one that you always want to look at is really looking at the estimated initial investment. Okay, and this is a chart that appears in item 7. It is supposed to be very comprehensive of every expense that they could imagine you will incur from the moment you sign the franchise agreement. So that starts with paying your initial franchise fee, maybe some marketing fees, things like, estimated investments on construction if you have a retail premises. It could be, if you had a mobile business that you have to buy a bunch of vans, right? You have to get vehicles, any kind of things that you're going to need. And it's interesting reading a lot of these to see what typically gets left off. So we usually don't see enough working capital, right? We don't see enough what's required to be disclosed as additional funds. It's always the last line in the item 7 chart. And that is not really usually taking into account the fact that most people, if they have an investment that's a significant size, they're getting a loan, which means that they have debt that they have to be repaying. And oftentimes, what they'll say, if you look at the notes to the item 7 chart, is that this does not include any amounts for debt service. And sometimes, okay, I understand that, yes, what you're paying as your interest rate could vary. However, almost every franchisee is getting an SBA loan. So you're probably getting we know pretty much what you're getting as your interest rate.
And that's one thing that we talk about a lot on the show. Most of the mentors believe 2.5 times what they tell you you need is what you really need. So
yeah, and that's really great to hear, because it means that people are getting really honest advice. And whether, you probably will still need more money for a longer period of time than that minimum 3 months that they legally have to give you the estimate for, which is why that number that you guys are quoting makes sense. So another topic that we want to make sure that is being really thoroughly looked at is the territory description. Okay. There is no one answer for what makes a good territory. It really can vary. And, franchisees from their perspective obviously want the most territory protection they can get. I think that to a certain extent, it's a dying breed. Right? We've all seen the pandemic where suddenly everything is everywhere. You're ordering online. It's not just about going in the store anymore, even for retail concepts. And there's more and more ways that potentially a franchisor could deliver services to customers that originally were only a franchisee's customers. Like Jerry's concept of his hair cutting. That's one of the final things I think that we're not going to put on the internet, right?
Yeah.
You do have to go somewhere. But besides hair cutting and maybe a few other things, most things nowadays, we're finding much more limited territories than we would have even 10 years ago. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I don't go into it thinking that, a more limited territory automatically is bad. But you have to understand, and I give clients examples of how potentially the franchisor could compete with the franchisee based on the exceptions, right? So that's one of the big topics, is to make sure that the franchisee is comfortable with that, whatever it looks like. Okay. Right. Ongoing fees. Okay. These are one of everybody's favorite topics. This list used to be really short, and now I feel like it's like 4 pages in the FDD. It used to just be basically, like maybe 1 page, but now there's so much more technology. There's so many more vendors that are involved in franchise relationships. It's no longer the case that it's just the franchisee and the franchisor, and that's the only people out there. There's just a lot more opportunities for other people and other service providers to be in there. So being really confident that you have a good projection, right, about what all these other fees are going to add up to be.
Right. And if you're locked into dedicated vendors, or what your obligations are to the franchisor when you sign that agreement.
Right. And it's important that you're comfortable with those. I also encourage prospective franchisees, candidates, to have phone calls, for a variety of topics, but one of them is to ask, about all these designated vendors. Say, are you comfortable with these people? Are they providing good service? Do they have issues? Are they late on deliveries? Are they, can you get them on the phone if you need to?
You get a good deal. Are they pricing competitively? Or
are they pricing competitively? Right. Those are concerns. Those are going to be very expensive to your bottom line. And then the last one, is the big one that everybody likes to talk about, and I hinted at it earlier, and that's your item 19, okay? And this is your financial performance representations, okay? This is where, in the franchise disclosure document, the franchisor can make statements, truthful statements, about what their earnings have been, about what their maybe different profiles of their customers, right? Like people tend to visit us twice a month, or, the average person does this, or sometimes you get expense data, which is really helpful. But I would say that for the most part, I think it's a little bit over 50% of franchises now do have some kind of item 19, some kind of financial data that's in their FDD. Okay. And it varies what it is, but it's a little over half at this point. And it makes it easier for the franchisor to be able to sell their concept if they have something in there, because if they don't, then they can't give you any information, right, about what the sales are like. And that's very frustrating, not only for the person who's trying to sell the franchise, like we were just hearing about, right? But it's also frustrating for the candidate because you just don't have a starting place. You're really just guessing. You're having to do a lot of due diligence where you're calling the other franchisees, like I mentioned, and you're saying to them, okay, well, you know, what were your sales last year? What were your sales in the first year you opened? Right. You know, and especially with the pandemic, sometimes it's very challenging right now to find franchisees, you know, especially new franchisees who you feel like their numbers are comparable or you can rely on them, because you don't know, you know, there haven't been as many franchisees opening lately in most systems, and there hasn't really been a lot of normal.
Right. So you're going to have some numbers that are skewed because of the pandemic, but hopefully that's going to be something that we overcome and move forward. And you know, I would imagine another thing, some of them have been able to really take the technology and run with it. So you can look at the ones who have done better during the pandemic than the ones who just sort of stayed stuck, right?
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting you bring that up because so brands that have really heavily invested in technology, let's take Domino's, for example. Okay. You know, Domino's has had an app for a long time, right? They have tons of funny little things you can do with their app. They have all kinds of quirky technology. And they really use that as part of their marketing as well. Basically, that it gets them in the news, you know, in trade press that they do this. Okay. They actually
touchless delivery where you can tell them exactly where you want to be, because we've done that.
Right. Isn't that cool? They have all these things, right? They've thought of all these things and they've done it. But what's interesting, you know, from a financial performance representation perspective is that in the past, Domino's used to have financial performance representations in their FDD. And since the pandemic started, they have actually taken them out because their sales have been so high that they do not want to be held to the standard of such high performance.
Interesting.
Okay. It's not that their sales were low and they're scared to show it. It's that they don't want anybody to think going in that they're always going to hit these very
unrealistic expectation or
right, because people have been ordering so much more from places like Domino's when they would say, right, like yourself.
Yep. All right. Well, Laura, all of this is really great information. We need to get to our next $1 million mentor. But one of the things that we are here for the viewers and the audience is helping you through that process. We've got Laura on our team. We've got, you know, Jerry, Ray, David, Karen, Kristin, tons of expertise that can help you navigate these kinds of questions if you're in the early stages of looking for a franchise. So feel free to reach out, go to pillarsoffranchising.com and fill out the contact form and we'll get back with you. Thank you so much, Laura.
Karen, it's us.
It's us. All right. How about it? All of a sudden, I see myself on the screen, right?
You know, I didn't follow the list that Elizabeth sent out, so I wasn't sure when we were on. So I was ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to talk about a topic today that's part of your book, right? It's Live It to Own It. And it's really, you're taking us through the journey, you know, franchising and the world of franchise ownership. And it's one of my favorite topics. And I know one of your favorite topics too. It's about the people side. And you were talking with Katie earlier about that, she called it, I think either one of you called it the magic. And I think people are the magic, just making sure you get the right people as part of this whole journey. And so take me through, if you think about as you were thinking through this chapter and staffing and talent acquisition, what are some real keys that you'd like to share with us today, some key things?
Well, thank you, Karen. And I know this is something near and dear to your heart, so it's really cool that you get to help me explain it. You know, I will guarantee you everything that people think about when they're looking to get involved in a franchise, staffing never is on their radar. They literally never think about that. In fact, many of them have the, you know, misguided interpretation that the franchisor will help them with that. And because of legal reasons, franchisors can't help with that. So, you know, most people, when they become a franchisee, have no experience in hiring. If they have had experience in hiring, it wasn't their money they were spending. So the whole process was looked at completely different than it is when it's your money you're putting into somebody. And frankly, if the franchisor you choose doesn't even give you any guidance as to, what positions you should outline in your hierarchy, what the different positions will be doing and those kinds of things, it's really a little bit of a hurdle to get through that. So, when I was when I was putting that chapter together, I wanted potential franchisees to understand what that looked like before they even spent their first dime. And then for those that were, getting into it and getting started up, it's kind of a roadmap as to how to put it together, because the franchisor may not be able to help them with a lot of it.
Absolutely. And even if they can help with some, as you mentioned, there's not a lot they can help. And I love it where you start with the big picture, instead of just going out and just doing a bunch of hiring. I love where you've got to take the strategic view. You've got to really think about that and think about the different roles that the roles people will play. And I think, as we all know, that's such a critical part to the success and the foundation of the franchise.
Well, you're right on. And, to go along with that, as a new business owner, you have this tipping point, because you have to have enough staff to service your clients, patients, whatever the title is, right? So you have to have enough. And when you're hiring, many times you get so engaged in hiring, literally more people than you need. And then you have to learn how to schedule those people. And scheduling is actually a part of the hiring process, because the conversations when you're hiring somebody will be wrapped around what hours they can work, how many hours, how many days, those kinds of things. So you got to think about scheduling when you're hiring. And people who have never scheduled before don't understand that now that you own your business, you've got to have enough you got to have enough staff to take care of the customers, but you also have to worry about overhead. So if you've got too many staff, you might take great care of your customers, but you're losing money with everyone that you take care of. So it's a really fine line that is a learned process. It's actually a science, not just something somebody can bless you with, which is why we kind of take them through that process in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so critical, because that's when your biggest expense is your people expense. And really making sure not only do you have the formula, but you're taking a look at that on a regular basis to make sure you're falling within your, kind of within your expected guidelines.
Yeah. And, I'd be curious what David has to say when he comes on, but with certainly with both of my businesses, and I think with most, retail or customer service related type businesses, personal service, many people think rent is your highest expense, but I know in particular in my joint clinics and in the Great Clips, rent is probably my second largest expense, but it's like a quarter of what the expense is for payroll, maybe a fifth or something like that. It's, the difference between first and second is huge. Absolutely. So maybe if you're dealing with a much larger location, like a very large restaurant, maybe it's backwards, but certainly with most average size retail or personal service organizations, it's going to be your highest expense by far. So very critical to consider all those things.
One of the things I also like that you were talking about in the book, and I've always had the philosophy that you always need to be thinking about, like hiring. Who's your next person? You're really out there looking for people, because as we know in this market today, that's tough. It's really tough to find great people. So you have to always be on the lookout for it. And I loved it because you really gave a lot of strategies, in the book about what to do to get people.
Well, yeah, in the time we're in right now, people should buy the book who are already franchisees just to get that stuff, because, we talk about a lot of different ways to recruit that most people have never thought about in the past. So that's a critical piece of it. And then how to micromanage a little bit on your hours to get 1 or 2 extra hours per person so that you don't need as many heads, because right now there aren't a lot of people out there looking for work. So it's very difficult. 2 things I'll add before we close this out. Churn in every business, but in particular in retail-oriented business, there's always going to be people that take a different job because, maybe they make more money, but a lot of times it's because they want to do something new. So we in our businesses are always hiring. We always find room for new people, because you're going to have some churn to deal with. And if you're an optimist like I am, Karen, you want to staff for growth. Yes. We don't want to staff just for the customers we have today. We want to staff for the customers we're going to have tomorrow. So when somebody good comes along, we're going to hire them, and then we'll find the customers to pay for them, not the other way around. So I know they're going to kick us off, Karen. So do you have anything else you'd like to have me talk about quickly before I get off?
No, I think you've covered some of the key points, and I really recommend that for those of you out there that haven't bought the book, definitely the Live It to Own It by Jerry Akers. Pick one up. Again, I've been on the franchisor side, the franchisee side. There's a lot I'm learning. So thank you for sharing your insights.
Thanks a lot, Karen. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
I almost got away with it not forgetting to mute. Great stuff as usual from Jerry and Karen. Lots of fun information to lead up to the IFA and get everybody excited. Don't forget to take a look at our sponsors, Franchise Show 247. Great online platform, 24-hour a day, 7-day a week platform where you can display anything to do with franchising for your business, whether you're a franchisee, a franchisor, or a vendor, or a franchise professional. I'm also at Titus Center for Franchising, one of the few educational facilities that has a business degree with a focus in franchising, which is very exciting. So be sure to check both of those out. Also, if you're at the IFA, be sure to take lots of photos and videos, send them our way, tag us online, and we will do the same for you. It'll be a fun way to get those who cannot attend participating and get the word out about what everybody's busy doing at the IFA in San Diego. Up next, we have got Karen. We're going to discuss going on with your hiring series, all about onboarding, which I think it's one of the most critical elements, because if you don't have a good onboarding process, then you've got a lot of lost employees, right?
Oh, it's true. And people spend, just talk with Jerry about this, right? Where you've got the whole staffing, the talent acquisition, you get all these great people, you spend so much time and so much money getting the right people there. And then so many times people kind of stop there and go, okay, come on, you're in here now, go sit with so-and-so, go do this. And there's really not an onboarding process or plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
Many times that people wonder, well, why did these good people leave? And many times it starts with day one on how you begin to onboard them, and what does that plan look like?
Right, because if they're not onboarded properly and they don't have the proper training and resources, then they're going to be set up to feel, whether they do or not, whether you think they're failing or not, they're going to feel like they're failing, right?
Absolutely. So I think one of the key things, I have several tips.
Mm-hmm.
One tip on the whole onboarding journey is, you mentioned the feeling included, the belonging, right, because you want to feel like you're contributing. So making sure that early on that you really, as the franchisee, that you're creating this culture of support for them,
Mm-hmm.
making them feel welcome on day one. It's if you have someone, I don't even the word mentor, if you've got someone that's there, a buddy, whatever you want to call it, to say this is your person that you can connect with, because many times as the franchisee, you're busy, you're doing a lot of different things.
Right.
Sure, they have someone to go to. And it's actually, I would say it's also a positive person, someone who actually is lives the culture there. So making sure you've got that, because then you're creating great habits early on. So to take off that, to find someone who's very dedicated to the brand themselves, so that you're teaching that whole branding goes through the employees. Absolutely. And then it also gives someone else an opportunity for their growth, right? Because they're also included. So it really does kill a lot of what is it? Kill two birds with one stone. And so you can provide opportunities and they can see that as well. So I think another one is making sure you've got an onboarding plan or an onboarding journey. I think that's really a key piece, because again, so many times when someone comes on board, I want to be successful, right? I'm new in this role. So how can I be successful? And if it's written down, if you really have touch points for here's where we're going to be, touching base with you. Mm-hmm. If it's weekly, if it's every other week, making sure that they're learning what they need to learn. Also connecting with them on that, I guess that one-to-one basis, but also even putting in there some of the key things they need to do in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, kind of what does success look like, and outlining that early on. Absolutely, because then they don't feel like they have to know it all at one time. If you set these benchmarks,
you give them a little bit of leeway to feel like they have time to learn, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's also good, for example, if you have someone who maybe isn't catching on, it's good to be high performing. It's good for someone if they're not catching on, you'll catch on that early. How many times have you had it where all of a sudden, maybe in month 5 or 6, it's like, wait a minute, this person's really not performing. It's really good to know that in month 1. And part of that is really making sure you've got those metrics, the metrics in place, and that you have that common cadence of just having conversations with them. And you'll be able to even detect early on kind of what's working, what's not working, because you might be able to make some tweaks early on as well.
Well, exactly. You can either tweak your process or how they're learning. Maybe they don't learn the way that you're teaching. I mean, there's so many little things that you can do to help that person become more successful without having to say, forget it.
Absolutely. And you
far down the road, forget it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you got the learning experience. You're right, because we all do learn different ways. And I think so many times, I know with franchising, a lot of times you'll have like a certain, model. There'll be processes and everything. But then once you get them in the franchise and they're working in the franchise, you do have that. But then some people will say, well, just go sit with so-and-so, or they'll put them in a room and say, read all this information, or take this online learning.
Right.
Like, whoa, it's a little overwhelming. So making sure that you really vary the learning experience, and also find out from them, okay, how do you learn best? So you can also adapt to that as well.
Yeah. Great advice. Did we get everything covered, Karen?
I think we did. I think the key thing is just thinking through the strategic pieces and making sure that you've got a plan in place. So when you've hired the right person, you're ready.
Absolutely. And for me as a communicator, always having that two-way communication where your new employee feels empowered to ask a question. No question is too stupid, rather get it right than have you wonder and flounder and waste all that time. So, all of those things, and the overarching thing too, is that communications from both directions, don't you think?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Karen, thank you so much. Good information as usual. And the last segment we have is going to be Jerry and David. David's got an update for us because I think you're going to be off the week after, and we need to find out what's going on.
Jerry, you've changed. I'm assuming, Ray, you've got me, right?
I met Ray and David. Too many of you. I can't keep you straight.
That's okay. So while Ray's trying to, recover from the shock of popping up on the screen, I'll go forward. So again, ironically, what I was going to say was just this: be prepared for surprises. So I guess that means in all areas. So be prepared for surprise. And I was thinking about this, and again, for prospective franchisees out there, nothing is going to go smooth, right? I mean, you think it's going to, because I bought a franchise, so everything's going to be right down the line. Everything's going to be smooth. It's not. It's still going to be real life. And so you have to be prepared for that. And I've seen way too many franchisees, when things kind of go off the track, already start to get a negative attitude and take a bad approach. They're upset with the franchisor. They're upset with the contract. Right away, they go right there and have almost default to a buyer's remorse. They're trying to screw me type mentality. Don't do that. That's not going to accomplish anything, and things are going to happen. So, for instance, you have an equipment list. Franchisor gives you an equipment list, and you have a build out. And you put that out for bid for the construction. They give you a cost. Well, in this particular case, where I said be ready for surprises, I overlooked something on the equipment list. I assumed that little piece of equipment was built into the costs of the build out. Then I got a bill for the piece of equipment. I went, whoa, what happened here? Well, my mistake, because I wasn't thorough enough. So point being is nobody got ripped off. It was just something I assumed was already built into another construction cost. So those are the things that are going to happen. But understand, be prepared for them. Be as thorough as you can all the time. And make sure that going through your checklist. Most franchisors will give you a checklist. I've got mine here, as you're building out, as you're going through it, and stay on top of it. That's the biggest advice I can give you, because there's going to be curveballs. There's going to be surprises. And speaking of build out, one of the things I think I mentioned earlier, but I want it's really important for new franchisees. You can't always get it, but I would suggest this: when you when you're bidding out your project to the contractors, ask for two things. Understand something called change orders, and understand you have to ask and say, what is the impact of the change orders? And, and how are those going to be handled? And the reason I say that is the plans look good on paper. Everything looks great. Then when you get into your space, all of a sudden, oh, you know what, something's three inches off or 6 inches off. Oh, you know what, I really wanted an outlet here. It makes more sense to add an outlet. And now you're adding costs. You're not going to do that for free. So you need to understand, you need to get clear with the contractor how our change order is going to be handled. The other thing is nobody's really going to do it at this, in this day and age right now. But you want to have what I call a drop dead date or a penalty clause. So you're not pushed, especially if you're not a large project, like ours is 1,000 square feet. If you have hired a contractor that has several different projects going on at once, you might get pushed to the bottom. So it's good to have a penalty clause to say, what happens when this project isn't completed by X date? Are you refunding me 10%, 5%, whatever? Those are all negotiable. I don't think you're going to get very far with that now because of all the issues, supply chain, et cetera, and help issues. But it's something to always think about, and it doesn't hurt to try for. So, and one more thing too, I put this down here because this is my last week here in Florida, and I'm going to head up to Michigan and get our boots on the ground so we can start really developing that area, marketing to the area, and getting to know people. We did sign an LOI for a second location, but here's another area. If you're out of the area the way I am, and you're trying to get some marketing going, and you don't really know the area, you need to get some help and have some cooperation among people. So one of the things I was looking at was buying a billboard. Well, they said, hey, here's the price. Here's the traffic count. Oh, it's great billboard, the whole bit. Because of my experience, I went, I'm going to take it another step further. Even though the person I hired to buy the billboard, I trust implicitly, he's still relying on the information from the person selling the billboard, and he's not in the area either. So I had my contractor. I said, do me a huge favor. When you're up there, drive down to where this billboard is. Let me know if it's something we should pursue. And sure enough, it wasn't. There was another sign from a business right in front of it blocking the billboard. That was almost a $5,000 mistake, depending on how long I would have purchased the contract. So go the extra mile. It's your business. It's your money. Take the time. Know that it's not going to go perfectly, but take the time to ensure that you're not making those mistakes.
Absolutely.
And that's all I had. I'll talk to you guys in a couple of weeks, I guess, from the cold.
David, you're going to have to change your shirt when you go back up north. You know that.
I know. That's why I wore it. It's my Florida shirt. It's my last day in Florida or for the show. Yeah. So I figured it's what better shirt to wear for this.
One comment I want to make is probably one of the most exciting times when you buy a franchise is simply when you start. To my wife and I, we had so much fun finding our office space, filling it up with chairs and desks and pictures and stuff like that. I think it's one of the biggest rewards that you get when you start a franchise. So one of the things I do want to do is I want to thank everyone for joining us on the show today with our guest, Katie Yeargan. Please be sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. As always, thank you to Laura Liss, our franchise attorney, Karen Kimsey-Sward, and David Kagjanich, and Jerry Akers, our $1 Million mentors, for the insight and wisdom. I am Ray Pillar, one of the $1 Million mentors, and this has been the Pillars of Franchising, and the dream starts here.